I'm Bill Easum, Managing Partner of 21st Century Strategies. I live in Port Aransas, Texas. I want you to leave here with two thoughts. The first one is this: your legacy is not so much what you leave behind as it is who you leave behind. The second thought is this: the more the pastor and staff hand off ministries to others, the more potential for growth there is for the individual, the church, and the kingdom. Now let me explain these two thoughts. In my mind, too many people have an incorrect understanding of what leadership is. Too many people think of leadership as depending on how many followers a person has. The more followers, the better the leader. I don't see leadership that way. To me, leadership is not about how many followers a person has, nor is it about how much a leader accomplishes in their life. To me, leadership is more about what people cause to happen in the lives of other people. Are they transformed? Are they finding their place in God's world? And are they passing that on to other people? One of my favorite sayings is, life comes to us on its way to someone else. If we pass it on, we grow. If we keep it to ourselves, we wither and die. I use two metaphors to explain these two thoughts. The first metaphor is that of a spiritual midwife. We all know what a midwife does. A midwife assists parents in the birth of their child. Similarly, a spiritual midwife assists Christians in the birth of their God-given gifts. There's nothing more beautiful than the birth of a child. There's nothing more beautiful than a Christian finding their place in God's world and giving birth to the gift that God has given them. The second metaphor is that of a scout. I think too many pastors go through life as a player in the game of life. They get so tied up in doing ministry that they don't have time to scout for potential leaders. I would prefer to think of a leader as a scout. Just as a scout goes to a AA ball game to scout out an individual who might be a potential pro player, so a good leader goes through life scouting for the leaders of the future. Not long ago, I was coaching a 40-year-old pastor who was in need of finding a new worship leader to replace a worship leader just left. So I asked the young pastor who he might have run across in the past that could fill the role of worship leader. He said he didn't know of any. I said, how come? He said, I didn't need one then. You see, this young man went through life playing the game, doing ministry, knows the grindstone. Didn't take time to look around, to scout out the people that God was sending his way, and to begin making a list of who might be the potential leaders of the future. So how does one leave a legacy of who? And how does a pastor and a staff hand off ministry as soon as possible to others? Well, let me give you some very quick bullet point answers. And I'm going to put these bullet points on my blog, BillEasum.com. Here's the first point. Set your own agenda based upon your call and the size of your vision. Don't let the church set your agenda. I can't tell you how many pastors reach age 55 and look back over their ministry and they never have done what God called them to do. They did what the church wanted them to do, and they're demoralized. So set your own agenda based on your call and the size of your vision. One way then to decide how to move forward is to ask yourself, if my church were twice its size, what would I have to quit doing and what would I have to stop doing? I remember at one point having asked this question and saying to myself, I've got to quit counseling people before they get married. I've got to hand that counseling off to someone else. You make your list. Here's what I've got to stop. Here's what I need to start. Then you do only what you feel called to do. Nothing more, nothing less. Just what you feel called to do. Then focus on what you do best. Don't worry about your weaknesses unless they're moral. Gather around you people who can augment your weaknesses. Just like Moses gathered Jethro, you need to focus on your strengths, not your weaknesses. Focusing on your weaknesses will cause you to be an ineffective leader. Once you've done all these things, develop your to-be list. We all know what a to-do list is. It's a list of things we've got to get done. Well, remember, your legacy doesn't depend upon what you get done. It depends on who you leave behind and how well you hand off ministry. So your to-be list is a list of people that you run across in your daily ministry who you think have the potential to be the leaders of the future. So you write their name down. You begin praying for them. You begin developing relationships with them. You take them to lunch. You hang out with them. You do what Jesus did. You just simply hang out with those people. And in time, they may be your next staff person. One of my favorite stories is that of the conversation George Whitefield had with his followers at his bedside when he was dying. George Whitefield was a contemporary of John Wesley. Here's what Whitefield said. I'm paraphrasing. I preached to more people than Wesley. I converted more people than Wesley. But Wesley's legacy will be far greater than mine. Mine will be but a straw in the wind. Wesley's will go on because he left behind an army of organized Christians. Folks, if you want to transform the world, you got to realize it's bigger than your ministry. If you want to change a city, you got to realize it's bigger than your ministry. If you want to have as major an impact on this world as possible, you've got to understand you do it not through what you accomplish, but what you accomplish in the lives through other people. You've got to pass on the great gift of leadership God's given you. You've got to allow others to blossom. Life has got to be passed on. Your legacy is in the who you leave behind, not the what. So start now. Decide what you do best and hand off the rest to someone else. You'll be glad you did.